Hello there. I have a story, well, that I found interesting at least, about JD Vance's 12-year-old relative denied a heart transplant because she didn't get the jab. Now, I have, of course, to mention, because this is YouTube, that clearly the jab is safe and effective, and anyone who says otherwise is a conspiracy theorist. Now that we've said that, we can move on. So, a 12-year-old Indiana girl who's related to Vice President J.D. Vance has been barred from a spot on a heart transplant list because she's not been jabbed against, the 19 thing. The thing is, they're basically saying after you get a transplant, your immune system is weakened and therefore you're in a greater risk. So we won't do the transplant unless you get the jab. Both the 19 and the flu, incidentally. As someone who didn't get the jab and has no plans to ever take any mRNA jabs at all, I find this interesting because I can easily see this extended in many ways. Essentially, there is a huge push for mRNA technology to become the standard and a requirement in order to engage with the health services for now, quite possibly for the next pandemic, which they keep telling us it's just a few years away. It could be once again for everything in society. If you remember, for example, the Australian government was saying that not only will you not get medical care, but you'll basically be locked out of participating in society if you don't get jabbed.
From a situation where, to protect the health system, we've got everybody locked down. We're going to move to a situation where, to protect the health system, we're going to lock out people who are not vaccinated and can be. If you're making the choice not to get vaccinated, then you're making the wrong choice. You're making the wrong choice. And for safety's sake, and for the back to that point about how much work our nurses have to do, as this becomes absolutely a pandemic of the unvaccinated and we open everything up, it's not going to be safe for people who are not vaccinated to be roaming around the place spreading the virus.
So you can understand where that is going. I'll have to mention that we later found out that the research they had from the very beginning showed that getting jabbed does not in fact stop you from getting the thing or infecting others with the thing. So there was actually no risk for others just because you didn't get it. If it helped, it would help you personally. Of course it helps. Of course, what am I talking about? I'm not a conspiracy theorist. Obviously, it's safe and effective. But yeah, it didn't prevent the spread. If you remember, we had a lot of CNN anchors and MSNBC anchors going and saying that, it's the spread stops with every person who gets the jab. And then later on, they claimed, well, we never said that after the research came out that they had from the very beginning. So that was interesting. And I had some questions over to our faithful AI Grok, which I personally think is very left-leaning, mind you. Anyway, so I asked it about similar cases. The cases it came up with were mostly from previous years. This one seems to be more recent. But it shows that there have been a slew of cases across time. So it's not something that popped up recently again. It just never stopped. We didn't notice because for most people, in their day-to-day life, they didn't feel affected by such a discrimination. But turns out it was happening, and if you were in serious need of medical attention, it might well have affected you. Essentially, the story is very much what we've heard. I went through some other reports, and basically, the girl in question had multiple heart conditions. She was being treated for a while, and basically, the family says, well, we have religious beliefs that stop us from getting the jab, and the hospital says you have to, otherwise it's unsafe for us to do transplant, so we won't do it. And now they're looking for alternative ways to get the problem solved because they're refusing the jab. It's interesting that in June 2024, a Rasmussen report, they did the National Telephone and Online Survey that indicated 33% of American adults agree with the statement that the 19 jab thing is ending large numbers of people. 33% of the American public in June 2024. Interesting. So there's been a lot of others, but the conclusion was basically that something along the lines of a third of the American public believes it's bad. So clearly they are dangerous conspiracy theorists, obviously. But it is strange that you can have a third of your country go, yeah, we don't want that thing, it's nasty, but then the government goes, you have to. And it's the National Institute of Health that creates the guidelines that basically say you have to, incidentally. It's literally from the federal government. So, how many people don't want any more jabs? Basically, it says about 20 to 30% of the people. Strong skepticism and so on. Interesting. I will point out that it is required if you are, trying to talk to other people at all, anywhere else but Rumble, maybe, and perhaps on X, perhaps to some extent, you have to be pro-jab. You must. Otherwise, you're banned. So it is interesting that despite the fact that there is a lot of positivity about the jabs, we still have a third of the public going, these things are very bad. Strange, those conspiracy theories. It's very strange. Clearly, they have no basis, obviously. So, it says here that basically about 20 to 25% of the public remains unjabbed, presumably, by assessments. And I also asked whether it's possible to sue these jab makers. And it turns out that there is something called the Public Readiness and Emergency Preparedness PrEP Act. And it was invoked by the Health and Human Services, the HHS, Secretary in February 2020, providing legal protection to companies involved in producing or distributing medical supplies, including jabs, during a public health emergency. This immunity lasts until at least October 2024, with optional potential for extension. There are exceptions for willful misconduct, but basically, if you read through the whole thing, it's very, very rare and difficult to be able to get any compensation for side effects or any other problems caused by it. Obviously, these are minor and rare because it's safe and effective, obviously. So, at this point, I can't help but notice that the entire mRNA technology is relatively new, relatively untested, and of course, the specific jab in question is also relatively new and tested. It was, it received an experimental approval, basically a rush job due to the need at the time, the perceived need at the time for a jab for the 19. So, my personal reasons for not getting it were, well, I didn't want to be a guinea pig, essentially, for the new untested jab, for the new untested technology. And, well, I still feel that way about the entire mRNA technology, even though, as I've covered in previous videos, there may well not be a choice given to us because, well, the new technologies may allow such things to just spread among the populace or through food or many other ways. Essentially, you wouldn't have a choice whether you get it or not, which would be interesting, to say the least. So, what is my conclusion from all of this? I'd say that I'm kind of worried, not going to lie, about the possibility of having a medical emergency and being refused service because of my choice about my own body, what to do with my health. And as we've already said, that will not affect others. I also want to point out that this entire system that was created to enforce the requirement of jabs during the 19, it's not gone at all. It's still in place. In fact, it has been developed further. There's a lot of articles about that. It's beyond the scope of this video a bit. But they have been, manufacturing and researching more technology to enforce such things. And we have been promised a new virus coming up in a few years. by the same people who predicted the previous one, to the point that you had to wonder if it had anything to do with all the money they gave to a certain lab in Wuhan that researched bats and respiratory illnesses. So, is it possible for the bad times to come again? I think so. I hope that the public is going to be much more skeptical and independently minded this time around, that trust in the government is not going to be nearly as high, and that the current US government, which sets the tone for the Western world, obviously, is less willing to accept expert opinions, despite the fact that the experts are always right and everything they say is true, obviously. Does this mean that there's anything that we can do about it? Because that's the most important question, right? Can we in our personal lives do anything to affect such trends going on in society? And I'd have to say that there isn't much that you can do to refuse, walk away, or withdraw and rescind your funding from these things, because, well, they usually happen with the government's backing through your tax dollars, without you having much say in it. And generally, unless you have need of the system, you have very little interaction with it as it stands right now. Other than being aware and prepared the next time that something rolls around, there isn't much you can do. You can try and improve your own health. Get some sunlight, get some exercise, don't eat junk food, etc. Maybe get some supplements if you find any that you deem healthy for you. But yeah, there isn't that much that you can do. You can absolutely criticize the research that they do to advance systems of monitoring and enforcing the will of the state. You can rail against the censorship that you find online so that people can discuss these ideas more openly. And you can also criticize, I think that's probably the biggest and easiest target, the immunity that the jab makers have. Because it makes no sense that you have a product that can theoretically, of course, hurt people, but there is absolutely no recompense given for it. Do remember that the largest criminal fines in history were at some point awarded against Pfizer, Moderna, and the other jab makers. So they each have multiple such fines levied against them for willful actions that they took against the law and against the interests and health of their customers. That's all well documented. The idea that in 2020 somehow all of that disappeared and from now on they're all saints, well, it obviously makes sense because everything they produce is safe and effective, obviously. So, did you learn anything from this? Do you feel more well equipped for the next event that's going to descend on us eventually? I hope so. I hope it helped. Thanks for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you next time.